there is an issue with parkland or our park and there's a development coming in, would you turn it over, not a recommendation, but give it to the Parks and Rec so that they can take a look at it, because there are Parks and Recreation and Environmental Advisory Board, and we agreed to that, and I understand that. There's no deal with Benderson. The commission is not selling anything yet. Yes, for the past couple years, I've met with a few people, and I also want to reiterate that this goes way back in the history of Sarasota. I want us to be mindful of impugning a developer with the development. In the case of Benderson, they are an amazing neighbor in this community, have given a lot to the community, not just in development, but in social services and a lot of things, and they have been upfront on a lot of this. Although a piece of the Beneva Fruitville land, some consider it parkland, there are multiple uses there, multiple other uses there. In the event of a sale to anyone, you bet we would have to address those uses, ensure that they're appropriately relocated. The fire department, and you probably know more about this, the fire department uses a large portion for training, another portion a helicopter pad, a wide and rather deep drainage. We've talked about that drainage ditch for so long, it would need to be retained to traverse the main park area, which complicates the request for proposal. And by the way, they came to us. We did not send out an RFP because perhaps, and I can't speak for everybody in the city, that this would be a difficult one to put out. So Benderson came to us. City thought maybe it might not be a good idea for a few years. They came to us for an offer. They're using their own money, as Richard said, to conduct the feasibility study to determine what kind of project would go there. Given the desire expressed to preserve the parkland and all the other factors, the whole deal could change. It may be thrown out. We don't know. I mean, there are all kinds of opportunities, and by the way, there will be a lot of community meetings. We have such a long way to go. Could there be part of that land a pocket park? I don't know that yet. And as far as that other company, Commodore, who came to the table a few months ago and presented, I have $3 million for you. Benderson only wants 1.2. They said, here's $3 million and we'll deal with that. We didn't know what they were going to do with the drainage ditch. They came late, with all due respect to that company and the gentleman that came, but he sent out flyers to all of you with this elaborate commercial use, saying, do you want this in your neighborhood? That was manipulative. We were not going to deal with that at the commission table, and I stated that. You're not going to sway us that way. So there's a lot to this. I believe that the community meetings that are going to happen, all of these neighborhoods are going to ultimately have a say. There is no deal yet, but we need to really look at this. And I want to reiterate again, let's be careful sometimes, and Kelvin mentioned this, how we view the development with the developer versus the neighborhood that it's going to happen in. So, thank you.
Hey, Linda.
Well, I first heard about the project at the same, I think probably the same commission meeting that's been referenced. And I was surprised and a little confused about the situation. And so with the new information today, I'm still a little confused about the situation. So all I'm going to do is tell you, because I think there's been enough dialogue that you understand what's going on. My position relative, especially to parkland. I moved into a neighborhood with a beautiful 10-acre park and have worked for 30 years to ensure that that park is protected. And during the affordable housing crisis, or when it was really a high issue, we had people that wanted to take a portion of our park and turn it into affordable housing. And it was for a good cause. I mean, they proposed for Habitat for Humanity to come in. That's a great organization. It would have done, you know, the work that they do was very good. But it was taking a portion of our park. It wasn't taking the whole park, but a portion of it. And that was something that I just couldn't my neighbors couldn't have happened. So my position on parkland is pretty strong and straightforward, in that you preserve your green space. Your green space is very, very precious. When I told you about my work at the Nature Conservancy, and that was a very personal, even though it was a paying job for me, it was very personal, because what it did, it showed how this community absolutely wants to protect its precious natural resources. And so from that perspective, that's where I am on this particular project.
Susan, I made a list here and I went this way on it, and from what I said, we'll go with.
I'm glad we have 4 minutes to talk about this. I'm on the planning board, so I have to be very careful to explain to you that this issue will be coming before the planning board, and it is a deliberative process, and I have to a certain extent, keep an open mind that I will listen to the other commissioners. But I want to tell you what is really happening here. The deal has been approved. The amount of money to be paid has been approved. It is contingent on not a rezoning, but a change of our comprehensive plan. Our comprehensive plan is our planning document that is supposed to be stable in our community, that gives us the predictability of knowing whether we're going to have a high-rise next door or not, whether we're going to have a park or not. That is supposed to be a stable thing. I heard about it first at the Coalition of City Neighborhood Associations when your neighborhood representative, Millie Smalls, brought it up, as I had to run out of the room because I'm on the planning board and we'll get sued if 2 of us sit there at the same time. But then it was discussed about putting the issue on the agenda at the executive committee of the CCNA. And that tells you something about what the Coalition of City Neighborhood Associations does. We bring information to each other and train each other about the way the city process works. So we understand there's a difference between the zoning code and the comprehensive plan. So the question that you brought up is, can you undo it? I sat there in that same city commission meeting that everybody else is talking about, and I thought to myself, you are so fortunate, because when, right after my husband died, it came before the election, before the public, about whether we require a supermajority to change our comprehensive plan. And people call me up and they said, would you chair this campaign? I said, I can't do it, I'm just grieving. But I did. I went out every night. I would go home and cry, but I went out every night and I campaigned for supermajority. What that means, 4 votes to change our comprehensive plan. Can it be done? You betcha. It takes 4 votes. 2 people voted against it. Do they have 4 votes? I don't know. I don't think so. So can it be undone? Yes. This whole deal is contingent on amending our comprehensive plan, which requires a supermajority. So with regard to the traffic study, every case where traffic is going to be impacted, the developer has to pay for the traffic study. That's not something that is knowable by one developer. That's required. At that city commission meeting, the thing that bothered me about what was happening was there was disrespect on so many levels. There was disrespect of our comprehensive plan, that we can just change anytime there's a project proposed. There was disrespect of public input in the process. It was a surprise process. Thank you. There was disrespect of our request for proposal system. There was disrespect of the concept of parks. There was disrespect of our drainage infrastructure. And all of those things bothered me. And so I think that we have to recognize that we need to respect our process. And respecting our process, whether it's a reversal of city policy or sticking with city policy. We have a policy of good government, of including the public, of respecting our parkland, of requiring a supermajority, of giving people notice, of treating people with respect, and that's what I want.
You know better than I do who's next. Because
I thought we were done.
I thought we were done.
You're all done.
We're done.
All right, I've made a straight list this time of how we'll go in order. If you have things to add to it, anything you want to say more about this, these are the questions that were asked, and I'm sure this is the most important thing as far as some of the people here. I think there are a couple of things that need to be explained to people who are not as government-oriented. An RFP is a request for proposal that when there is something for sale or for some kind of contract or agreement, it's issued to the general public.
Right.
It's a notice in the newspaper, right?
Right.
That the city is looking for somebody, some company, some individual for a certain thing. Somebody else can probably explain it better than I did. But this did not go through that process. And I don't, no one mentioned any dates. They referred to a commission meeting. I don't know what that date was.
I don't have the date. This is a long, long process. And by the way, just back to that point, this was a sole source that came with Benderson, and that wasn't an RFP, it was a sole source. They
Yes,
came to
they
us
came
with
to the
ideas,
city.
and we did it. And as far as,
I'm
Okay.
sorry, go ahead, Suzanne.
no, and I was just gonna say, I don't have the dates on the top of my head.
I want to make something clear. The Bendersons did not come to them. The Bendersons were approached by city staff saying, we have a piece of property that you might want to consider looking at. All right.
Sure, they were a part of it. Wow.
The city staff came to the Bendersons. The Bendersons went out and took money out of their pocket to see if this thing was even feasible. That's why there was no RFP. There was no RFP to go out. There was no basis for putting out an RFP. We didn't even know, the Bendersons didn't know if this thing was even viable. And despite what Susan tells you, this deal is not done. I met with representatives last week. They're not sure the deal is going to get done. There are terms in place, but the deal is not done, I assure you.
Can I talk about the comprehensive
Okay,
plan?
just a second. Bill, I think we should limit these comments to some time, minute or so?
Couple of minutes.
Okay, all right. And Suzanne certainly, Susan can certainly explain the RFP or whatever you want to talk about as far as process is concerned.
With regard to whether the deal is done, the terms have been agreed, except they are contingent on a comprehensive plan amendment. There is a comprehensive plan cycle, and that's why we don't have a commission date, because a comprehensive plan cycle comes twice a year. And so they have to fit it in with the next comprehensive plan cycle, which could be 6 months. But for every comprehensive plan amendment, they have to go through a whole process, and that process has to be, that includes the community meeting that Suzanne Atwell was talking about. That includes a whole lot of different steps with the planning board, setting up meetings, fitting it into a 6-month time frame. So that's why we don't have a commission date. It has to first, even once they get through that process to present it, it has to first be docketed on the planning board agenda. Then the planning board hears all the evidence, public input, and makes a recommendation to the city commission. Then it is agenda probably the next month or two in the city commission. So this could be a process that's a year or longer.
Oh, while you were talking, I had a question that I can't,
I have a follow-up if that.
okay.
I was involved when I lived in Broward County and I was also involved up in the Chicago area in prior life.
Bill, make sure these people behind you can hear you too.
Okay. Okay, we're here. I lived in Broward County for a number of years. I also lived in the Chicago area for a number of years prior to moving to Broward. And I got involved in a couple of political issues on the periphery and then got much, much deeper. What I want to express by that is not that I was involved, but the concern that the community in general, and I think just not this group, have. In Broward, they changed the comprehensive land use plan to allow building a dump on top of the recharge area for the Biscayne aquifer. Now, I'm not going to go into the negatives and pluses on that, but what I am going to say is that the people in Broward County felt like they were thrown right down the river. There were groups, because Broward is large, that had no problem with it because they were 8-10 miles away from it. There were other groups and other communities within Broward who were very concerned, even though their water itself would not have been poisoned. They got it from different wells. But they still took great exception to it. And the only reason I say that, and you're welcome to comment any way you want to on this, but I think that the transparency has to be there on whatever decision is made so that people in the city that I've come to love truly understand that yes, there are political forces. Yes, there is land use. Yes, there's a situation where there's a piece of land over there that doesn't pay a penny in taxes right now, and Lord knows the city needs it, okay? But whatever decision is arrived at, that all the considerations are taken into account and not a huge special interest group such as existed in Broward County.
I'm surprised no one has any dates available. If I'm allowed to comment as the moderator.
On what?
On when all of
Well,
this
Susan
started.
just explained it.
No, I mean the dates of when the proposal
Well, I
was first
certainly
made to
don't
the
have it in
city.
hand, no.
When the
I mean,
staff started meeting with Benderson.
It's years ago.
At least a couple years ago.
August 11th, 2010, I believe, was the first meeting with city staff. Susan, what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, with regard to the dates about the next part of the process, it depends on the planning staff being able to get to it. We used to have a planning staff of 15. We now have a planning staff of 3.
Yes,
Can I ask a question?
certainly may.
Make a comment. We all know that Benderson does wonderful things.
Right.
I have no question about that. They're charitable and spending their money. I'm leery because the growing development up there, which started as a fairly small thing, but the county started giving away more and more and more money. Is this going to happen with the city?
The city doesn't have any money to give away.
Yeah, that's for
But that's a
sure.
very good question. We're very mindful of that. You're right, because people are talking about that, and I don't think we're at that point. Good answer.
Does anyone else have a question?
Should I respond to this?
Sure.
Actually, ma'am, the city could float a bond issue on this, and they could be paying for it for 30 years, and it could be enough money that Benderson could build a castle over there.
May I respond to that?
Sure.
I can almost guarantee you that anybody who is elected at city, whether it's Susan or Suzanne or myself, whoever, would never, just from what I know of these candidates, would never let a bond issue go up before this. And there'd be no reason for the bond issue. There's no necessity for the city to fund this project if it ever comes to fruition. We have to be extremely careful about what we use bond issues for. We've got $140 million of them right now. Costs us $50 million a year in debt service, so we're very careful on bond issues.
Can I respond?
Yeah.
I think your issue is regarding economic development. And what is, Mr. Lumpkin talked a lot about what is economic development. And what we have to recognize in our community, there are two views of economic development. One view of economic development is that you provide government funding to projects. And especially land development projects, you provide government funding or government assets to help those land development projects work. There's another concept of economic development, and I think we have to think about that is that you don't go by subsidies or corporate welfare, you go by attracting economic development through quality of life. Actually, there have been a lot of studies on that, and they find that economic development through attraction, especially in an area where residential properties provide the tax base, which is what they do in Sarasota, is that you attract people by the amenities, by having good infrastructure. We're dealing with our transportation plan right now. By having good, one of the things Google has been a generator of economic development in Kansas City. By having good, high quality, fast, ultra fast internet is one of the infrastructure issues we're talking about. By having arts and culture, which in our community are $180 million a year economic generator in our community. And that's what creates the goose that laid the golden egg in our community. If we allow so much real estate development that it destroys the quality of life, we will destroy this community. We will.
May I respond to that?
Sure.
First of all, Sarasota is a pretty built-out area. I'm an advocate of growth, and I'm an advocate of encouraging investment in our community. I'm an advocate of growth and investment in those areas that can support those areas, and I'm an advocate of trying to kill 2 or 3 birds with one stone. As I said in the beginning of this process, my personal crusade, what's the top of my agenda, is turning around the North Trail. I know of 2 businesses that would have been happy to locate in Sarasota had it not been for the inflexibility of our city commission and our planning board to give them the legislative tools necessary to allow them to invest in Sarasota. And specifically, if we are going to get investment on the North Trail, and I believe investment on the North Trail will both create jobs, it'll move crime out, it'll broaden our tax base, do lots of good things. But if we are allowed to create investment opportunities on the North Trail, we have to be able to tweak our zoning. We have to make